The rain hammered against the cracked pavement as Marcus Bennett threw the suitcase onto the sidewalk, his wife's clothes spilling into puddles like abandoned dreams. "Get out," he snarled, his voice cutting through the storm. "You and that bastard child don't belong here anymore." Inside the modest apartment, 23-year-old Iona Bennett clutched her 3-week-old son, Elijah, against her chest, her body trembling not from the cold but from the sheer brutality of betrayal. This was a man who had promised her forever just 2 years ago, the man who had whispered sweet nothings while building an empire of lies. Behind Marcus stood Simone Crawford, his mistress, draped in designer clothes that Iona's paychecks had probably funded, her red lips curved into a smile that screamed victory. "Baby, hurry up," Simone purred, wrapping her manicured fingers around Marcus's arm. "I want to redecorate before my friends come over tomorrow." The audacity of it all made Iona's stomach turn, but what broke her completely was a coldness in Marcus's eyes that once looked at her with something she thought was love. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button because this story of betrayal and revenge will leave you speechless, and you won't believe what happens when the tables turn. Iona had met Marcus 4 years ago at a community center in South Atlanta where she volunteered, teaching kids from the neighborhood how to read. He was charming back then, working as a mid-level sales manager at a tech startup, driving a decent car, and talking about dreams bigger than their zip code. She was a cashier at Target, putting herself through night classes at community college, dreaming of becoming a social worker. They were both strivers, both hungry for more, and when he proposed after 6 months with a ring he claimed he saved up for, she believed in the fairness of struggling together. Their wedding was small, held in her grandmother's backyard with string lights and a borrowed DJ, but Iona thought it was perfect. She thought love didn't need luxury. For 2 years, she worked double shifts while Marcus climbed the corporate ladder, and when she got pregnant, he promised her the world, promised that their child would never know poverty like they did. But somewhere between her morning sickness and maternity leave, Marcus changed. The late nights increased, the affection disappeared, and the promises turned into accusations that she was holding him back. 3 weeks after giving birth to Elijah, Iona's body still aching and her mind clouded with postpartum exhaustion, Marcus came home with Simone. Not as a guest, as his new reality. "I'm done playing poor," he told Iona that night, his voice void of remorse. "Simone's father owns half the real estate in Buckhead. She can give me the life I deserve, the connections I need. You." He looked at her with disgust. "You're just a reminder of where I came from, and I'm not going back." Iona begged him to reconsider, reminded him of their vows, of their son sleeping in the next room. But Marcus was already gone, mentally, emotionally, financially. He had opened a new bank account, moved his belongings into Simone's penthouse downtown, and even changed his phone number. The apartment lease was in his name, and he wanted her out by morning. Simone stood in the doorway, scrolling through her phone like this was just another Tuesday, occasionally glancing up to smirk at Iona's tears. "It's nothing personal, honey," Simone said sweetly, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Marcus just needs someone who matches his ambition. You understand, right?" That morning, as the rain soaked through her thin jacket and Elijah whimpered against her chest, Iona stood on the sidewalk with nowhere to go. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a call from an unknown number. Normally, she would have ignored it, but desperation made her answer. "Ms. Iona Bennett," a professional voice asked. "This is Attorney Jonathan Pierce from Pierce & Associates in New York. I've been trying to reach you regarding your late grandmother, Cecilia Monroe." Iona's heart stopped. Her grandmother had passed away 6 months ago, and Iona had been too broke to even afford the bus ticket to the funeral in Harlem. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand," Iona said, shifting Elijah to her other arm as Marcus and Simone drove away in his new BMW. The attorney cleared his throat. "Your grandmother left you something in her will, Ms. Bennett. It's substantial, but there are conditions. You must come to New York immediately, and you cannot inform anyone from your previous life, especially not your husband, until the legal proceedings are complete. It's a matter of protecting the inheritance." The word inheritance barely registered in Iona's exhausted mind, but the idea of escape did. With her last $73, Iona bought a one-way Greyhound ticket to New York City, holding Elijah close as the bus pulled away from Atlanta. She didn't know what awaited her, didn't know that her grandmother, a woman she'd only met twice as a child, was actually Cecilia Monroe, the silent founder of Monroe Global Enterprises, a billion-dollar empire spanning luxury hotels, tech investments, and international real estate. The inheritance came with one ironclad rule. Iona had to completely sever ties with her past, including Marcus, for 5 years while a legal team ensured no one could contest the will or exploit her newfound wealth. For 5 years, she would be invisible, untraceable, and utterly transformed. As the bus crossed the state line, Iona looked down at Elijah's sleeping face and made a silent vow. She would never be powerless again. She would build a kingdom for her son. And when the time was right, Marcus would learn the cost of throwing away a queen. What she didn't know was that in exactly 5 years, Marcus would walk into a boardroom meeting and come face to face with a woman he destroyed. Except this time, she'd be the one holding all the power, and his entire world would crumble at her feet. Will Iona rise from the ashes and make Marcus pay for his betrayal? Smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think she should do when she faces him again, because next chapter is going to blow your mind. 5 years had passed since that rainy night in Atlanta, and Iona Bennett no longer existed, at least not the broken woman Marcus had discarded like garbage. In her place stood Iona Monroe, CEO of Monroe Global Enterprises, a name that made Fortune 500 executives nervous and Wall Street analysts scramble for predictions. Her transformation hadn't been easy. It had been deliberate, calculated, and absolutely ruthless. The first year in New York had been spent in legal meetings, learning the intricate web of her grandmother's empire while raising Elijah in a penthouse that overlooked Central Park. Attorney Jonathan Pierce had become her mentor, teaching her not just about wealth but about power, how to wield it, protect it, and never apologize for it. Iona absorbed everything like a woman starving for knowledge, attending business courses at Columbia, networking with industry titans, and slowly stepping into her role as the silent force behind Monroe Global. By year 3, she wasn't just managing the empire. She was expanding it, acquiring struggling companies and turning them profitable, making strategic investments that doubled her grandmother's already staggering wealth. Now, at 28 years old, Iona sat in her corner office on the 40th floor of Monroe Tower in Manhattan, reviewing a file that made her heart race with something between satisfaction and cold fury, the acquisition proposal for Bennett Tech Solutions, Marcus's company. Elijah burst through the office doors, his 5-year-old energy filling the space as he ran to his mother's desk, his private school uniform slightly rumpled from playing. "Mommy, guess what I learned today?" he exclaimed, his bright eyes shining with intelligence that reminded Iona of her grandmother. She closed the file quickly, her expression softening as she pulled him onto her lap. "What did you learn, baby?" she asked, brushing his curly hair back. Elijah launched into an animated explanation about solar systems and planets, his vocabulary far beyond his years, and Iona felt her heart swell with pride and pain simultaneously. This brilliant, beautiful child, Marcus had thrown him away without a second thought, had called him a burden, had never even held him. Her assistant, Patricia, appeared in the doorway with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, Ms. Monroe. He insisted on seeing you before his piano lesson." Iona waved her off. "It's fine. Family always comes first." She meant it. Every decision she made, every company she acquired, every million she earned was for Elijah, to ensure he never felt the sting of poverty, rejection, or powerlessness that she had endured. After Elijah left with his nanny, Iona reopened the Bennett Tech file, her eyes scanning the financial statements with professional detachment. Marcus had done well for himself, she had to admit. After marrying Simone Crawford and leveraging her father's connections, he'd launched his own tech consulting firm that had grown exponentially over 5 years. Bennett Tech Solutions now had contracts with major corporations, employed over 200 people, and Marcus had positioned himself as a rising star in Atlanta's business community. He'd been featured in Black Enterprise magazine, spoke at conferences about entrepreneurship and overcoming adversity. The irony wasn't lost on Iona, and lived in a sprawling mansion in Buckhead with Simone and their twin daughters. From the outside, Marcus Bennett had everything. But Iona's team had done their homework, and the cracks in his empire were showing. Bennett Tech was overextended, carrying massive debt from aggressive expansion, and 3 of their biggest clients were threatening to pull contract due to missed deadlines and quality issues. Marcus needed capital desperately, and he'd been quietly shopping the company to potential investors for 6 months. That's where Iona came in. Monroe Global had made an offer, a generous one, to acquire 60% of Bennett Tech, inject the necessary capital, and install new management to turn things around. The proposal had been sent through intermediaries and shell companies. Marcus had no idea who was really behind the offer. He was scheduled to meet with a lead investor in exactly 1 week, and Iona had ensured that meeting would take place in Atlanta, at a neutral location where Marcus would feel comfortable and confident. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Iona as she stared out her office window at the Manhattan skyline, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. She'd spent 5 years becoming everything Marcus had accused her of not being: powerful, connected, wealthy beyond measure. She'd transformed herself from a Target cashier into a business magnate who could buy and sell men like Marcus before breakfast. But the wealth hadn't healed the wound. It had only given her the tools for justice. Jonathan Pierce knocked and entered, his silver hair and expensive suit a testament to his decades in corporate law. "You sure you want to do this yourself?" he asked, his voice carrying a fatherly concern. "I can send Davidson or Chen to handle the Atlanta meeting. You don't have to face him." Iona turned from the window, her expression unreadable. "Yes, I do," she said quietly. "Marcus needs to see what he threw away. He needs to understand that the woman he discarded built an empire while he was playing businessman with his mistress's money." Jonathan nodded slowly. "Just remember, Iona, revenge is a meal best served cold, but it can still burn you if you're not careful. Are you doing this for justice or for pain?" Iona didn't answer immediately. She thought about that rainy night, about holding newborn Elijah while Marcus looked at them with disgust, about Simone's mocking smile as they drove away. "I'm doing this for truth," Iona finally said, her voice steady and cold. "Marcus threw us out because he thought poverty defined our worth. He married Simone because he thought wealth was inherited, not earned. He's about to learn that the beggar he abandoned is now the queen who controls his fate." She picked up the Bennett Tech file and handed it to Jonathan. "Prepare everything. I want complete control, not just financial, but operational. When I walk into that boardroom, I want Marcus to sign papers that make me his boss in every sense of the word. And Jonathan," she paused, her eyes hardening, "make sure the contract includes a clause that prevents him from walking away. If he wants to save his company, his employees, and his reputation, he'll have to work for me. He'll have to answer to me, every single day." Jonathan took the file, a slight smile playing at his lips. "You've learned well, Iona. Your grandmother would be proud." As he left, Iona returned to the window, her mind already in Atlanta, already seeing Marcus's face when he realized the truth. She wasn't doing this just for revenge. She was doing it for every woman who had been thrown away, told she wasn't enough, left to drown while men climbed ladders built on broken promises. In 7 days, Marcus Bennett would walk into a conference room expecting a savior and find the ghost of his greatest mistake sitting at the head of the table, and his entire world would shatter in ways he couldn't even imagine. Comment below if you think Iona should show mercy or make Marcus suffer. And don't forget to subscribe, because Chapter 3 is when everything explodes. Marcus Bennett straightened his tie in the reflection of the glass conference room at the Buckhead Grand Hotel, his palms sweating despite the air conditioning that hummed quietly overhead. This was it. The meeting that would save Bennett Tech Solutions from bankruptcy, that would prove to Simone's father he wasn't just some charity case who'd merit into money, that would cement his legacy as a self-made businessman. Behind him, his CFO Derek Williams shuffled papers nervously, whispering about contingency plans if the investors' terms were too aggressive. Marcus waved him off with false confidence. "Relax, man. We're about to secure $20 million in funding from Monroe Global Enterprises. This is our moment. He checked his Rolex, a gift from Simone, and smoothed down his custom Tom Ford suit, the kind he used to dream about back when he was married to Iona. Good. He hadn't thought about her in years, not since he'd signed the divorce papers that a lawyer had sent 2 years after he kicked her out. She'd disappeared completely, probably crawled back to whatever Section 8 housing she came from, raising that kid on welfare and food stamps. Marcus felt a twinge of something. Not guilt exactly, but acknowledgement that he'd been harsh. But harsh was necessary for success, he told himself. Winners did what losers wouldn't. The conference room door opened, and Marcus plastered on his most charming smile, extending his hand before he even looked up. Mr. Monroe, I presume? Marcus Bennett, CEO and founder of. His voice died in his throat. The woman who entered wasn't just beautiful. She was devastating. If you're watching, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will have your jaw on the floor, and you need to see how this confrontation unfolds. Iona Monroe walked into that conference room like she owned it, because technically she owned the entire hotel. Her navy blue Armani suit was tailored perfectly to her frame, her natural hair styled in elegant locks that fell past her shoulders, and her presence commanded attention without saying a word. Behind her stood Jonathan Pierce and 2 other attorneys, their expression professional and utterly unreadable. Marcus's hand was still extended stupidly in the air, his brain struggling to reconcile the elegant powerhouse before him with a memory of the sobbing woman he'd thrown into the rain. Iona, he whispered, the color draining from his face. Derek looked between them, confused. You two know each other. Iona didn't smile. She walked to the head of the conference table, set down her homie's briefcase, and finally met Marcus's eyes with gaze so cold it could freeze hell. We were married once, she said simply, her voice carrying none of the warmth it used to have, before he threw me and our 3-week-old son into the street to make room for his mistress. But that was 5 years ago. Today, I'm the CEO of Monroe Global Enterprises, and apparently Mr. Bennett needs my help to save his failing company. The words hit Marcus like physical blows, each one stripping away the confidence he'd walked in with. Derek's eyes went wide, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Marcus grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. That's impossible, Marcus stammered, his mind racing through calculations that didn't add up. You were a cashier. You were broke. You had nothing. Iona sat down gracefully, crossing her legs and gesturing for her team to take seats. I had nothing because I gave everything to support your dreams, Marcus. But it turns out my grandmother, Cecilia Monroe, perhaps you've heard of her, left me $1 billion empire. The inheritance came through 3 weeks after you abandoned us. Ironic timing, wouldn't you say? She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the polished table toward Marcus. These are the terms of Monroe Global's investment in Bennett Tech. $25 million in capital injection in exchange for 65% ownership and full operational control. You'll remain as a figurehead CEO, but every major decision goes through me. You'll report to me quarterly. Your salary will be restructured, and there's a morality clause that allows me to terminate you for cause at any time. Marcus snatched a contract, his hand shaking as he flipped through pages of legal jargon that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. This is insane, he hissed. You're taking over my company. You're making me your employee. Iona's expression didn't change. No, Marcus. I'm saving your company from the bankruptcy you drove it toward through incompetence and ego. Without this deal, you'll lose everything in 6 months. Your business, your reputation, probably your marriage when Simone realizes you're broke again. Derek cleared his throat uncomfortably. Marcus, maybe we should review the terms carefully. Monroe Global is offering above-market valuation, and a capital injection would solve our immediate cash flow problems. Marcus spun on him, fury replacing shock. Shut up, Derek. Can't you see what this is? This is revenge. She's doing this because I left her. Iona laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. You give yourself too much credit, Marcus. This is business. Bennett Tech has excellent infrastructure, solid contracts if you can actually deliver, and a talented workforce being dragged down by poor leadership. I'm investing because there's profit potential, not because I'm nursing some broken heart from 5 years ago." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "But let me be crystal clear. If you walk away from this deal, I'll ensure that every one of your major clients knows about your financial instability. I'll poach your best employees. I'll systematically dismantle what you've built until there's nothing left but debt and humiliation. Or you can sign the contract, keep your title, save 200 jobs, and learn what it's like to answer to someone who actually owned their position." The room fell silent except for the ticking of an expensive clock on the wall. Marcus's world was collapsing in real time, every assumption he'd made about success and superiority crumbling under the weight of this impossible reality. The woman he'd called worthless, the woman he considered beneath him, was now holding his entire future in her perfectly manicured hands. "I need time to think," Marcus said weakly, his bravado completely shattered. "I need to consult with my wife, my lawyers." I understood. Signaling the meeting was over. "You have 72 hours to sign, Marcus. After that, the offer drops to 55% ownership, and the terms get significantly worse. Oh, and one more thing." She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo, a beautiful 5-year-old boy with Marcus's eyes and eye on his smile, dressed in a private school uniform, holding a trophy for a science competition. "That's Elijah, your son. The child you threw away is already smarter than most adults, speaks 3 languages, and will inherit everything I built. He asks about his father sometimes, wants to know why you didn't love him. I tell him some men mistake cruelty for strength, poverty for weakness. He's starting to understand that wealth doesn't make a person valuable. Character does, something you never learned." Marcus stared at the photo, and for the first time in 5 years, he felt something crack inside his chest, something that might have been regret or shame or the horrifying realization that he'd destroyed the wrong life. Iona tucked her phone away and walked toward the door, her team following. 72 hours, Marcus. Choose wisely. As the door closed behind her, Marcus collapsed into a chair, the contract blurring in front of him as reality set in. He was about to become an employee of the woman he betrayed, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. Drop a comment and tell me if Marcus deserves what's coming, and hit that like button because next chapter reveals Simone's reaction when she finds out who really has the power now. Marcus sat in his car in the hotel parking garage for nearly an hour after the meeting ended, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The contract lay on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb, and his phone had been buzzing non-stop with calls from Derek, from his board members, from people who sensed something had gone catastrophically wrong. But Marcus couldn't bring himself to answer any of them because he couldn't explain what had just happened without admitting to the greatest miscalculation of his life. Iona wasn't supposed to exist anymore. She was supposed to have faded into obscurity, a footnote in his success story, maybe struggling somewhere with their kid while he lived the life he deserved. Instead, she'd walked into that conference room like a goddess of retribution, holding his entire world hostage with the kind of power he'd only dreamed about. The photo of Elijah burned in his mind, those eyes that looked exactly like his own, that trophy for academic excellence, that expensive uniform. His son was thriving without him, being raised by billions of dollars, and a mother who'd apparently become everything Marcus had pretended to be. The shame of it was suffocating. Finally, Marcus started his BMW and drove toward his mansion in Buckhead, dreading the conversation that awaited him because Simone Crawford Bennett was many things, but understanding wasn't one of them. The mansion was a monument to borrowed success, 8,000 square feet of marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and furniture that Simone had charged the credit cards Marcus was still paying off. He found her in the sunroom, sipping wine while scrolling through Instagram, their 5-year-old twin daughters playing with a nanny in the background. Simone looked up when Marcus entered, her expression immediately souring at whatever she saw on his face. "Don't tell me the meeting went badly," she said, setting down her wine glass with a sharp click. "Daddy's been calling all afternoon asking about the investment. He told everyone at the country club that you were about to secure a major deal." Marcus loosened his tie and poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon before answering. The meeting was complicated. Simone stood, her designer dress swishing as she crossed to him, her perfectly made-up face twisted with impatience. Complicated how? Marcus? Either they're investing or they are not. It's not rocket science. He downed the bourbon in one burning gulp. They're investing. $25 million. But they want majority control, 65% of the company. And the lead investor is... He paused, the words catching in his throat like broken glass. It's Iona. The name hung in the air between them like a curse. Simone's face went blank for a moment, processing, then her eyes narrowed dangerously. Iona? As in your poor little ex-wife, Iona? The cashier with a baby you threw out 5 years ago. Simone's voice rose with each word, drawing the attention of the nanny who quickly ushered the twins out of the room. That Iona is investing $25 million in your company? Are you drunk or just stupid? Marcus slammed his glass down on the bar cart. She inherited a fortune. Simone. Her grandmother was Cecilia Monroe, Monroe Global Enterprises. Apparently, the old woman left Iona everything, and now she's worth billions. Billions! And she's not just investing, she's taking over. She wants operational control, wants me reporting to her, wants to own everything I built. Simone stared at him like he'd grown a second head, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to comprehend his impossible reversal of fortune. Finally, she laughed, a high, brittle sound that made Marcus flinch. So let me get this straight. The woman you humiliated, the woman you threw onto the street with a newborn baby, the woman you divorced because she was too poor and pathetic to advance your career, that woman is now a billionaire CEO who's about to become your boss. She laughed again, harder this time, with an edge of hysteria. Oh my God, Marcus, this is priceless. This is absolutely priceless. Marcus felt anger flare in his chest, hot and defensive. This isn't funny, Simone. Our entire life is at stake here. Simone's laughter died instantly, replaced by cold calculation. No, Marcus, your life is at stake. My life is perfectly secure because I'm Simone Crawford. My father owns half of Buckhead. I have my own trust fund, my own investments, my own identity. You? She looked him up and down with barely concealed contempt. You're the guy who climbed out of poverty by marrying me and using my family's connections. If your company goes under, if you become an employee instead of a CEO, if Iona Monroe owns you, what exactly are you to me anymore? The words hit Marcus like a slap. In 5 years of marriage, Simone had never quite said it out loud, but the implication had always been there. He was valuable because of what he could achieve, not who he was. Their relationship was transactional, built on mutual benefit and social climbing, not love. Simone had given him access and legitimacy. He was supposed to give her the status of being married to a self-made success story. But if he wasn't successful anymore, if he was just another employee taking orders from his ex-wife, what was the point? You're really going to do this? Marcus asked quietly, something breaking in his voice. You're going to abandon me the second things get difficult? What about our daughters? What about the vows we took? Simone picked up her wineglass and took a long sip, her eyes cold and assessing. Don't talk to me about vows, Marcus. You threw away vows when it suited you. You threw away a wife and baby when they became inconvenient. Did you really think karma wasn't going to catch up eventually? Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself, but he couldn't because she was right. He'd done exactly that. Abandoned Iona the moment she stopped serving his ambitions, traded her for someone who could elevate him faster. Now the universe was returning the favor, and Simone was doing the same math he'd done 5 years ago. I need you to talk to your father, Marcus said desperately. Maybe he can offer alternative financing, or connect me with other investors who don't have a personal vendetta. Simone cut him off with a sharp gesture. Daddy's not throwing good money after bad. Marcus. He warned me about you from the beginning, said you had more ambition than sense. I defended you. I convinced him you were worth the investment. Now I have to go tell him that not only is your company failing, but your bitter ex-wife is about to own you. Do you understand how embarrassing that is for me?" She set down her glass and headed toward the door, pausing to look back at him with something between pity and disgust. "You have 72 hours to decide, right? Here's my advice. Sign the contract. Keep whatever scraps of dignity you have left, and pray that Iona gets bored of humiliating you before she destroys you completely. Because if you don't, if you let this company go bankrupt out of pride, I will file for divorce so fast your head will spin, and you'll lose everything anyway. The house, custody of the girls, your reputation. At least if you work for Iona, you'll still have income." As Simone walked away, leaving Marcus alone in the sunroom with empty glasses and emptier promises, he finally understood the true cost of his choices. He'd built his entire life on foundations of greed and betrayal, and now those same foundations were crumbling beneath him, leaving him nowhere to stand. Tell us in the comments what you would do in Marcus's situation, and make sure you're subscribed because Chapter 5 brings an unexpected twist that changes everything. Marcus signed a contract at 2 a.m. on the third day, alone in his home office while Simone slept in the guest bedroom, and his daughters dreamed innocent dreams down the hall. His hands shook as he wrote his signature on page after page, each one feeling like a piece of his soul being traded away for survival. Derek had reviewed the terms with 3 different lawyers, and they'd all said the same thing. It was the best deal Marcus was going to get, possibly the only deal that would save Bennett Tech from complete collapse. But knowing it was smart didn't make it hurt any less. By dawn, Marcus had scanned and emailed the signed documents to Jonathan Pierce, and by 8 a.m., his phone rang with a callback that made his stomach drop. It wasn't Jonathan, it was Iona herself. "Good morning, Marcus." Her voice came through crystal clear, professional and cold as winter. "I received the signed contracts. Welcome to the Monroe Global family. We'll be making the announcement to your staff and the press this afternoon. I'll need you at Bennett Tech headquarters by noon for the transition meeting." Marcus gripped the phone tighter. "Iona, before we do this, can we talk? Privately? About everything that happened?" She cut him off smoothly. "We can talk about business transitions and operational strategies. Everything else is ancient history that has no bearing on our professional relationship. Noon, Marcus. Don't be late." The line went dead, and Marcus sat staring at his phone, realizing that the woman he'd once controlled completely now controlled him in ways he couldn't escape. If you think this story is intense, hit that subscribe button because what happens when Marcus faces his employees knowing Iona owns everything will leave you speechless. The conference room at Bennett Tech was packed with senior staff, all of them buzzing with nervous energy about the emergency meeting their CEO had called. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his expensive suit feeling like a costume, his confident facade cracking under the weight of what he had to announce. Derek sat beside him, expression grim, already knowing what was coming. The others, department heads, project managers, people who'd followed Marcus's leadership for years, had no idea their world was about to shift. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Marcus began, his voice sounding hollow even to his own ears. "I've called this meeting to announce that Bennett Tech has secured a major investment from Monroe Global Enterprises. They'll be injecting $25 million in capital and taking a majority stake in the company." Murmurs rippled through the room, some excited, some confused. Janet from HR raised her hand. "That's incredible news, Marcus. Monroe Global is huge. But what does this mean for leadership structure?" Before Marcus could answer, the conference room doors opened, and Iona walked in with Jonathan Pierce and 2 other executives from Monroe Global. She looked every inch the billionaire CEO in her burgundy power suit, her presence immediately commanding the room's attention. Marcus felt every eye shift from him to her, felt his authority draining away in real time. "It means I'm your new majority owner and operational director," Iona said smoothly, walking to the head of the table where Marcus stood. She didn't ask him to move. She simply stood beside him, her energy so powerful that Marcus instinctively stepped back, ceding the position. "My name is Iona Monroe, CEO of Monroe Global Enterprises. As of today, Bennett Tech becomes part of our portfolio, and while Marcus will remain as CEO in title, all major decisions will flow through me and my management team. The room fell silent as staff members exchanged confused glances, clearly trying to process this power shift. Then James from sales, who had been with the company since the beginning, spoke up carefully. "Ms. Monroe, can I ask, do you have experience in the tech consulting industry? We've built something special here, and we're concerned about outside leadership that might not understand our culture or client relationships." It was a fair question, diplomatically phrased, but Marcus saw the flash of something in Iona's eyes, not anger, but the kind of calm confidence that comes from holding all the cards. "That's an excellent question, James. I don't have direct experience in tech consulting, which is why I'm not replacing Marcus, yet. However, I do have experience turning struggling companies profitable, which Bennett Tech desperately needs." She pulled up a presentation on the screen behind her, and Marcus felt his blood run cold as financial data filled the display, data that should have been private, confidential. "Your company is 3 months from insolvency. You have $18 million in outstanding debt. Your 3 largest clients are threatening to terminate contracts due to missed deadlines and quality issues, and your burn rate exceeds your revenue by 40%. Marcus has been hiding this from most of you while desperately seeking investors to save him from his own poor management." The room erupted in shocked whispers and angry stares directed at Marcus, who felt his face burn with humiliation. "That's not entirely fair," Marcus started, but Iona spoke over him with a kind of authority that made him fall silent like a scolded child. "It's completely fair, Marcus. You overextended the company chasing growth metrics to impress investors and your wife's family. You underbid on contracts to steal business from competitors, then couldn't deliver quality work with a reduced budgets. You hired your wife's cousin as VP of operations despite him having zero relevant experience, and has cost you millions in efficiency losses. Should I continue?" She turned back to the staff. "I'm not here to sugarcoat things. Bennett Tech has excellent employees, solid technology, and real potential. But it's been mismanaged into crisis. My job is to fix that, restructure your debt, renegotiate your contracts, bring in competent leadership when needed, and make this company profitable again. Some of you will thrive in this new structure. Some of you won't. But everyone will be held accountable based on performance, not politics or connections." Janet raised a hand again, her voice tentative. "Ms. Monroe, I have to ask, is there history between you and Marcus? Some of us are sensing tension that feels personal, not professional." The room held its collective breath. Marcus prayed Iona would lie, would maintain professional discretion, would spare him this final humiliation. She didn't. "Yes, there's history," Iona said calmly. "Marcus and I were married. We had a son together. 5 years ago, when our son was 3 weeks old, Marcus threw us out of our home to make room for his mistress, who is now his current wife. He divorced me, abandoned his child, and apparently used that freedom to build this company on his new wife's family money and connections." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus watched his respect drain from his employees' faces, replaced by shock, disgust, and in some cases, barely concealed satisfaction. These were people who'd witnessed his arrogance, his favoritism, his tendency to take credit for their work. Now they were seeing him exposed completely. "So yes," Iona continued, her voice never losing its professional edge despite the personal nature of her words. "There's history. But this decision is purely business. Bennett Tech is a good investment that's being ruined by poor leadership. I'm here to correct that. Marcus remains CEO because he has relationships with clients and knowledge of ongoing projects. But make no mistake, I own this company now, and things are going to change dramatically." She turned to Marcus, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of power and something else, something that might have been sadness for who he used to be. "Marcus, you'll receive an email within the hour outlining your new responsibilities and reporting structure. Everyone else, expect individual meetings with my HR team over the next week. We're conducting a full performance review of every department and every position. Come prepared to justify your role and your contributions." As Iona and her team filed out of the conference room, leaving chaos and whispered conversations in their wake, Marcus remained standing at the head of the table, no longer feeling like the head of anything. Derek approached him carefully. "Man, you should have told us about the personal connection. We could have prepared differently, maybe found alternative investors." Marcus shook his head, defeat settling over him like a heavy blanket. There were no alternative investors. Derek, Iona was the only one willing to save us, and she's only doing it because destroying me slowly is more satisfying than watching me fail quickly. He looked around at his staff, at the empire he'd built that was no longer his, and finally understood what Iona had known all along, that true power wasn't about who you married or what you inherited, but what you built with your own hands and how you treated people when you had nothing to lose. And Marcus had failed that test spectacularly. Drop a comment telling us if Iona is going too far or if Marcus deserves everything he's getting. And don't miss next chapter where we find out if there's any chance of redemption or if this is the end of Marcus's world. 6 months after Iona took control of Bennett Tech, Marcus sat in his modest downtown Atlanta apartment, a far cry from a Buckhead mansion he'd lost in a divorce, staring at a letter that had arrived by courier that morning. The envelope was expensive, cream-colored paper with a Monroe Global logo embossed in gold, and inside was an invitation that made his hand shake. "You are cordially invited to attend Elijah Bennett Monroe's 6th birthday celebration, an academic achievement ceremony. Your presence is requested by Elijah himself, who wishes to meet his father." Marcus read the words 3 times, his throat tight with emotions he'd spent 6 months trying to suppress. Simone had left him exactly as she promised, filing for divorce the moment the company takeover became public knowledge. She'd taken the twins, the mansion, and whatever dignity Marcus had left, painting herself as a victim of his poor choices in every society column that would listen. Her father had blacklisted him from half the business opportunities in Atlanta, and Marcus had watched his social circle evaporate overnight. But the worst part, the part that kept him awake at night, wasn't the loss of wealth or status. It was a growing realization of what he'd actually thrown away 5 years ago. Working under Iona's leadership had been humbling in ways Marcus couldn't have imagined. She was brilliant, decisive, and fair in ways that made his own leadership look amateurish by comparison. She'd restructured Bennett Tech with surgical precision, cutting waste, renegotiating contracts, and bringing in talent that transformed the company from struggling to thriving within months. And through it all, she treated Marcus with professional courtesy but emotional distance, never cruel but never warm, a constant reminder that he was now just an employee in a machine much bigger than himself. Subscribe right now because this finale will show you whether redemption is possible, and if Marcus can ever fix what he destroyed. The birthday party was held at Iona's penthouse in the new Monroe Tower that overlooked Piedmont Park, a building that hadn't existed 6 months ago but now stood as a testament to her expanding empire. Marcus arrived in his paid-off Honda Civic, wearing his best suit that suddenly felt cheap compared to the valet's parking Maseratis and Teslas. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt like ascending to judgment, and when the doors opened, Marcus stepped into a world of wealth and warmth that took his breath away. The space was filled with children from Elijah's private school, their parents who were clearly Atlanta's elite, and decorations that celebrated not just a birthday but academic excellence, science fair trophies, spelling bee ribbons, math competition medals. And there, in the center of it all, was Elijah. He was taller now, his face still holding traces of baby fat, but his eyes sharp with intelligence that reminded Marcus painfully of his own father. The boy was explaining something about solar energy to a group of adults who listened with genuine interest, his confidence and articulation far beyond his 6 years. Marcus felt his heart crack watching this stranger who carried his DNA but none of his influence. "You must be Marcus." The voice came from beside him, and Marcus turned to find Jonathan Pierce holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider, offering one with a neutral expression. "Elijah's been asking about you for weeks. Iona finally agreed to let him meet you, but there are ground rules." Marcus took the glass with shaking hands. "What kind of ground rules?" Jonathan's expression was firm but not unkind. "You don't get to disrupt his life, confuse him with promises you can't keep, or treat this like some redemption arc for your guilt. Elijah is a smart, sensitive kid who deserves honesty. Iona prepared him for this meeting, told him the truth about what happened in age-appropriate terms. He knows you left when he was a baby, knows you have other children now, knows you and his mother aren't together. What he doesn't know is whether you're worth knowing at all. That's what today determines. Before Marcus could respond, a small voice cut through the party noise. Are you my dad? Elijah stood 3 feet away, his expression cautious but curious, holding a piece of birthday cake on an expensive plate. Up close, Marcus could see himself in the boy's features, his jawline, his eyebrows, the way he tilted his head when studying something. But there was Iona, too, her eyes, her grace, her quiet strength. Yes, Marcus managed, his voice rough with emotion. I'm your dad. Happy birthday, Elijah. The boy considered this, taking a bite of cake while he processed. Mom says you left because you wanted different things. She says people make mistakes when they are scared or selfish. Were you scared or selfish? The question was delivered with such innocent directness that Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. Here was his son, 6 years old, asking the question Marcus had been avoiding for half a decade. Both, Marcus admitted, kneeling down to Elijah's level. I was both. I was scared that staying would mean I'd never be successful, and I was selfish enough to think success mattered more than family. I was wrong. Elijah, I was so wrong, and I'm sorrier than you can possibly understand. Elijah nodded slowly, as if this answer satisfied some internal calculation. Mom's not scared or selfish. She built everything for us. She says love is about what you do, not what you say. So what are you going to do? The question hung in the air, and Marcus realized that his 6-year-old son had just articulated what Iona had been demonstrating for months, that redemption wasn't about apologies or explanations, but about action and consistency. I'd like to know you, Marcus said carefully, if you and your mom allow it. I can't change the past, but I'd like to be part of your future, whatever that looks like, even if it's just birthday parties and report cards, even if you never call me Dad. I just want to be here. Elijah, finally be here. Elijah studied him for a long moment, then held out a forkful of cake. Okay, but you have to try the cake first. Mom made it herself, and it's really good. Marcus took the offered bite, the sweetness of it mixing with the salt of tears he didn't realize were falling. Across the room, Iona watched the interaction with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of something like peace. As the party continued, Marcus found himself in conversations with Elijah's teachers, his friends' parents, people who shared stories about this remarkable child who loved science and asked questions that challenged adults. He learned that Elijah wanted to be an environmental engineer, that he'd started a recycling program at his school, that he played piano and spoke Mandarin and had Iona's gift for seeing solutions where others saw problems. This was the son Marcus had thrown away, and the magnitude of that loss finally hit him with crushing force.